Every year, more than 6 million people stand at the rim of the Grand Canyon. They photograph it. They marvel at it. They read the plaques that tell them it was carved by water over 5 million years into the oldest exposed rock on the surface of the earth. And then they leave. None of them know what is inside it. Not the canyon itself, the open, surveyed, photographed canyon that appears on maps and postcards and national park brochures. The other part, the part that does not appear on any map available to the public. The part that the United States government has designated as permanently, indefinitely restricted. The part where, according to a front-page newspaper report published in 1909, a team of Smithsonian-affiliated explorers discovered something that should not exist. Something ancient. Something engineered. Something that did not belong to any civilization that mainstream history has ever acknowledged. This is the story they buried. And this is what they found.
April 5th, 1909. The Arizona Gazette, a major regional newspaper, publishes a story on its front page. Not buried, not a footnote. Front page. The article details the findings of one G.E. Kincaid, a veteran wilderness explorer with decades of experience navigating the American frontier. According to the report, Kincaid had been conducting an expedition down the Colorado River under the direction of Professor S.A. Jordan of the Smithsonian Institution. It was a routine survey. It was not supposed to become anything more than that. But somewhere along the river's passage through the canyon, Kincaid noticed something. High above the waterline, far above the reach of any flood, carved into the sheer face of the canyon wall, were markings. Stains on the rock that were not natural. Discolorations in a pattern too deliberate to dismiss. Kincaid climbed. The ascent took hours. The cliff face offered almost no purchase. By the time he reached the source of the markings, he was nearly 1,000 feet above the river. What he found at the top was a doorway. Not a crack in the rock, not a natural cave entrance. A carved, deliberately formed opening, positioned in the cliff face with a clear view of the sky above and the river far below. He stepped inside, and the canyon swallowed him whole.
According to Kincaid's account, the entrance opened into a main corridor stretching several hundred feet into the solid rock of the canyon wall. The tunnel had not been formed by nature. It had been cut, shaped, engineered with a level of precision that would challenge modern construction tools, let alone Stone Age implements. The walls were smooth to the touch. The ceiling rose at a consistent height. The floor had been leveled and compacted. And branching off from the central corridor on either side, dozens of smaller chambers, each one distinct, each one deliberate. In the first chambers he explored, Kincaid found tools. Not crude stone axes, not the flint blades of nomadic hunters. Sophisticated copper instruments, chisels, blades, implements, forged with a metallurgical understanding that should not have existed in North America at any period mainstream archaeology currently acknowledges. In the deeper chambers, pottery, glazed, decorated, in a style that bore no resemblance to any known indigenous American tradition. And on the walls, hieroglyphs. Not pictographs, not petroglyphs, structured, systematic hieroglyphic script, bearing unmistakable similarities to ancient Egyptian writing systems. But the central chamber stopped him cold. In the heart of the complex, a vast, high-ceilinged room larger than any cathedral Kincaid had ever entered, sat a figure.
a carved stone idol, seated cross-legged on a raised stone platform. Its proportions were massive. Its features, unlike anything of European or indigenous American origin, bore the unmistakable stylistic hallmarks of ancient Eastern religious iconography. Part Egyptian, part Buddhist, something older than either. Surrounding the idol, urns, gold artifacts, tablets engraved with symbols that resisted translation. Kincaid estimated the complex was large enough to have sheltered and sustained 50,000 people. 50,000. An entire civilization living inside a mountain, in the heart of what is now the American Southwest. Thousands of years before Columbus. Thousands of years before any acknowledged contact between the Eastern and Western worlds. He documented everything he could, sketched, measured, and then descended back to the river to send word to the Smithsonian.
Word reached the Smithsonian. A full expedition was dispatched. Professor Jordan, identified in the original Arizona Gazette article, led a team to the site. Excavations began. The findings were documented, cataloged, and transported. And then, the record goes dark. When independent researchers, historians, journalists, and alternative archaeologists later contacted the Smithsonian Institution to inquire about the Kincaid expedition, the response was swift, uniform, and final. No record of G.E. Kincaid. No record of Professor Jordan. No documentation of any expedition to that area of the canyon in 1909. No artifacts, no field notes, no photographs. Nothing. This is the moment the story becomes something more than a mystery, because absence of evidence in this case is itself a form of evidence. The Smithsonian Institution, at the time of Kincaid's discovery, was operating under a doctrine known informally among researchers as the manifest destiny of archaeology. The institutional position, enforced by senior officials and reflected in every major publication of the era, was explicit. The Americas had no advanced pre-contact civilization. The continent was a wilderness until Europeans arrived. Anything that challenged that framework was not inconvenient. It was dangerous.
Whose published work rested on the assumption of a primitive pre-contact America. The pattern Kincaid's story follows is not unique. It appears again and again across the archaeological record of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Discovery, documentation, transport to a federal institution, silence. The objects do not disappear. Objects rarely disappear. They are simply placed somewhere they will never be requested. Somewhere dark. Somewhere indexed under a designation that carries no name anyone would think to search for. And the site itself? Today, the stretch of the Grand Canyon that matches Kincaid's coordinates to within navigable accuracy is classified as a restricted federal zone. Hikers are turned back. Drones are prohibited. Independent researchers who have attempted to approach the area from the river have reported being intercepted by park rangers before reaching the canyon walls. No explanation is given beyond the standard restricted area. Ask yourself this. The Grand Canyon receives millions of visitors every year. Its walls have been mapped, photographed, and studied by geologists for over a century. Every trail, every accessible route, every geological feature of note has been cataloged and published. So why, in one specific section of that canyon, does access require a federal permit that is never granted? What, exactly, is being protected? And from whom?
They removed the artifacts. They sealed the reports. They erased the names from the institutional record. But there is one thing they could not undo. The names on the map. Open any modern topographic map of the Grand Canyon, the kind you can access from the U.S. Geological Survey,
and navigate to the area surrounding the coordinates described in Kincaid's original account. Look at the names of the peaks: Isis Temple, Osiris Temple, the Tower of Set, Horus Temple, Shiva Temple. These are not the names of American geological features. They are the names of ancient Egyptian deities, of Hindu gods, of the divine figures that presided over the very civilizations whose artifacts Kincaid claimed to have found carved into the canyon walls. Mainstream historians have an answer for this, of course. They will tell you that 19th century geologists were romantics, that they drew on classical mythology and Eastern religion to give poetic names to impressive natural formations, that it means nothing. Perhaps. But consider the alternative explanation. That the men who first mapped this section of the canyon, men who may have known exactly what Kincaid's expedition found, left those names as markers. Quiet, permanent, public markers, embedded in the official cartographic record, pointing to the location of something they could not speak about openly. A message left inside the map itself, hidden in plain sight. For anyone patient enough to ask why an Egyptian god watches over a restricted section of American soil.
Step back from the specific details of Kincaid's account for a moment. Step back from the copper tools and the stone idol and the hieroglyphs, and ask the larger question. If a civilization advanced enough to build a 50,000-person subterranean city into the walls of the Grand Canyon did exist, how did they get there? The Pacific Ocean separates the American Southwest from Egypt by thousands of miles. The Atlantic separates it from the Mediterranean world. The conventional story of human migration says that no contact between these civilizations was possible before Columbus, before Leif Erikson, before any documented crossing. And yet, across the ancient world, in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in the Indus Valley, in the highland temples of Southeast Asia, we find the same recurring architectural signature: underground chambers, carved stone corridors, central idol chambers, astronomical alignments, written systems that encode knowledge across generations. The same signature appears in Ohio's Newark earthworks. The same signature appears in the cliff dwellings of the American Southwest. The same signature appears, if Kincaid is to be believed, carved into the living rock of the Grand Canyon itself. What if the story of human civilization is not a story of isolated parallel development across separate continents? What if it is a story of a single, ancient, interconnected world, far older than our textbooks allow, that was fractured by time, by catastrophe, by the deliberate rewriting of history in the service of power? What if the Grand Canyon is not a monument to geology? What if it is a monument to a civilization we have been forbidden to remember? The canyon is still there. The restricted zone is still there. And somewhere inside the walls of the oldest exposed rock on Earth, so is everything else. Waiting. Patient as stone. The official story has been told for over a century. It is smooth and simple and asks nothing of you. But the other story? The one carved into cliff faces and encoded into map names and buried in government archives? That story asks everything. It asks you to consider that history is not a record of what happened. It is a record of what the powerful decided you were allowed to know. We are relic of time. And we are just getting started. Subscribe, and never stop asking what is hidden inside the walls.